symptoms show up sometimes not physically first. They show up mentally and emotionally, very dysregulated, couldn't like handle tough conversations, like, really easy to be agitated, irritated, putting strain and stress on our marriage. And then we found out that I was in full kidney failure, and it made all the months leading up to that make so much more sense.
Hi, I'm Leslie Silverman, and I thrive on deep, honest conversations with entrepreneurs about how we show up as the truest version of ourselves, both personally and professionally. Because when we let our light shine, we give others permission to do the same. This is a category of one. Today, our guest is Dr. Rachel Kapustka. She is a chiropractor and lifestyle medicine practitioner who challenges the way we think about health, performance, and burnout. Her work centers on the nervous system because no amount of discipline, optimization, or mindset work can override a body that doesn't feel safe. Through clinical practice, entrepreneurship, and lived experience, Dr. Rachel helps people reconnect to their bodies, make sustainable changes, and lead from alignment instead of exhaustion. She brings a grounded, no-nonsense perspective to conversations about health, identity, and what it actually takes to build a life that works. I am so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for coming.
I'm so excited to be here, and thanks for having me.
Rachel not only is an exceptional person, but she has become a close friend. And we have so many deep, incredible conversations off screen that when I launched this project and was really looking into recording and broadcasting these types of conversations, she immediately came to mind. So share with us a little bit about even your bio and your philosophy sounds so different from the status quo of all chiropractic. Can you just high level tell us a little bit about how you approach your trade more holistically and how you think you stand apart as a category of one in your business space?
Yes. Well, it's such a unique art as part of the foundation of chiropractic. We talk about how it's a philosophy, it's a science, and it's an art. And I think the art is where the individuality comes into as practitioners, which has been refined and developed over the last 20, this is my 20th year of practice. So the last 20 years of actually practicing in my own business. And then I started working in chiropractic when I was 16. Right. So some pretty formative years and highly influenced by some really amazing mentors. My brother-in-law, very amazing chiropractor, human being, got his degree when he in the 80s. And so I just am so blessed to have had such profound guidance in my personal life, but then also planting seeds along the way about what a wonderful profession it is and how good I would be at it. I don't really know, even to this day, what he saw in me that made him feel compelled to encourage me to look into going to school and all those things. And then later, I started working for another chiropractor who had a very different approach and picked up a lot of tools and education from him and became really impassioned in that office around, wow, we're really led astray about what is truly healthcare and what do our systems, or like what we would say in chiropractic in our office, what is your language of your body trying to communicate and get your attention around. And then fast forward to chiropractic school, really came along to meet this incredible mentor who recently passed away. His name is Arnaud Bernier. And he really influenced me, as well as his wife, around the connection between our lived experiences, mental, emotional health, the things that we go through individually as healthcare providers, and how we really need to look into that and address our own traumas and wounds in order to be able to be a clear conduit for those around us. So it is something that has been really developed over a long period of time and continues to evolve, because I love to learn, and it can be overwhelming sometimes to have the awareness that there's never an end point to that. It's like, oh my God, when will I be done? Never, not till the day we're gone off this planet. So it's always evolving. But that's part of it. And then, of course, my own journey with my own health and looking for my own answers about how it applies directly to me. and then journey through motherhood and things like that. It's a philosophy that has helped me. The chiropractic philosophy is something that has guided me in every part of my life.
That's so cool. I love what you said about looking at your own trauma, your own body. And so, really, you're coming from a place of experience, not just some service providers or medical professionals
Yeah.
who maybe can't identify with what their patient or client is experiencing
Hmm.
because they haven't experienced it themselves. So,
Oh,
the
yeah.
fact that you journeyed down that path and then come to your own realizations. And so I'm privy to other personal things about you. So we're just going to dive right in because we go deep
Yes.
here.
Oh,
And, I would love to hear about, you are a kidney transplant survivor.
I
And
am.
I would love to just dive right into how that experience contributes to how you show up as a practitioner and how you have personalized how you support your ideal patient or client based on
Mhm.
that experience.
I'm also a type 1 diabetic, which led to the kidney failure over many years. I was 21 when I was diagnosed with type 1, and I didn't get the best support at first. I felt very malaligned with the direction I was being guided by with the providers that first diagnosed me. And I was young, right? So I didn't know what my options were, but I also was working with that one chiropractor at the time. So I had this really strong philosophy on these concepts and principles that we use in chiropractic, like the power that made the body heals the body. And it was coming up, clashing up against what I was experiencing and then the medical diagnosis and the language I was getting from them too, right? Which was, you're never going to heal from this. You're going to always need to take medicine. And I was having a really strong internal battle with how do I integrate these two very extreme concepts about how to approach what was happening within my body and how to make sense of it. So long story, longer 20, 30 years past that, um, there was a chunk of time in the early years where not only did I not quite know how to manage it, then I got into a phase of like some pretty strong denial around it and just living as if I didn't have this major diagnosis. And then when I went into chiropractic school, I felt flawed. Like, what am I doing wrong? If the power that made the body heals the body, and I'm doing chiropractic care, I've received chiropractic care since I was 13 years old, then why is this that this is happening? If what chiropractic truly does is reunite man, the body with man, the physical, and then that innate intelligence can help the body to perform optimally. And I think that that took a long time to understand. And then I came across a really profound teacher. Her name is Sue Brown, who's also no longer with us. And she helped me make sense of the fact that we get disconnected from our body for whatever reason, right? In chiropractic, we call it a subluxation or a structural shift that creates obstruction in the nerve system. That leads to chronic illness or lack of ease in the body. For her, was the purpose behind it is because when we reconnect, we gain information and knowledge about our body, ourselves, life. It transcends boundaries that we know that are logical and educational and intellectual, right? It's things we can't see, touch, or feel. And that really helped me accept the concepts around what is it that I do as a chiropractor? What is it that's happening in my body? What are the gifts in it? How can I optimize all of that? And so that then led to all kinds of things, including investigating nutritional approaches to other kinds of healers, to how do I integrate with the medical side of things. And I have the coolest conversations with my medical doctors. I love going to my medical appointments now because it always turns into like a philosophical conversation where before I was just like, don't tell me what to do, like so stubborn and resistant to all of it, right? So to now this like unfolding and helping each other understand from my own personal experience and my educational background and theirs. So it's a really beautiful experience. But over time, there's another principle in chiropractic called limitations to matter, right? So if we damage ourselves to a certain point, it is difficult, if not impossible, to restore what has been ignored or not paid attention to in a long time. So that being said, still do not lose optimism around how I could optimize my lived experience by making good choices and integrating my healthcare. So the kidney transplant, first the failure, was a slow progression, but it wasn't identified until I was in stage 4. And that was the year that we were clearly planning to relocate our family and our home to Denver from Durango, and for our son Noah, who is deaf. And this diagnosis came at a point where I chose not to prioritize it as far as like, who do I need to see? What types of doctors? What are my options? It was like, okay, how can I um, literally put this on the back burner while taking care of myself and my everyday choices, and then get to Denver and reestablish a team up here for care? The stress of all of that was tremendous. Selling a business, opening a new business, leaving a community that I was really in love with. It was a great lifestyle. Noah's community, his friends, and then stepping into a year of separation of our family because it took us a year to sell the business. So Noah and I were up here for a year by ourselves mostly, and we were also commuting back and forth between 2 locations to keep the business going until we did finalize the sell of that practice. So it was a lot, and I think it was the final straw for my body, and, I was having a hard time. One of the first symptoms was that I just was not adapting well to the mental emotional stress of all that change, and I think that's common in our culture, to ignore the fact that symptoms show up sometimes not physically first. They show up mentally and emotionally, very dysregulated, couldn't like handle tough conversations, like, really easy to be agitated, irritated, putting strain and stress on our marriage. And then we found out that I was in full kidney failure, and it made all the months leading up to that make so much more sense. Like, wow, when the fit body was that physically compromised, there was no bandwidth to handle what we were handling at the time. So that's the short of it. And then I was seeing an acupuncturist, and he was just so kind and generous. And his mail lady was in process already of being worked up to donate her kidney to whoever needed it. And he introduced us. And she is a dear, dear friend now and part of our family. And she literally saved my life. It's like, it's impossible to ever repay her for what she did for me and my family and everybody that I get to meet since then, right? Like, I had a day, not a day, but many days where I really wasn't sure if I was going to choose treatment or not. I was really faced with that question of life or death, which is pretty profound. So many of us don't get that opportunity, right? It's like you're alive one day and dead the next. You don't get time to ponder it. So that was a really wild and amazing blessing and gift that I got to really think about, like, what is life? What is it that I'm living for? What is it? And also that it would be totally acceptable to be done and say my goodbyes and live out my last days as long as my rest of my physiology would hold out without treatment, right? So it was a wild experience.
Can't even imagine, and well, I mean, selfishly, I'm really glad you opted for the kidney transplant because I never would have met you, and I think you impact so many people, and just watching how you show up in the world for your friends, for yourself, for your son, and the people who love you and everyone. But one thing that I just wanted to comment on that you said
Yes.
was looking at us all holistically, right? Like, on a superficial level, sometimes I'll comment like, we can't separate who we are personally from who we are professionally. How we show up as a human is how we should show up in our business. But this is at such a more profound depth than that, right? And so showing up, like understanding that one, you can't, segment just one piece of your body, like, oh, my kidney's not working. I mean, we are a whole system. We
Yes.
are a whole being,
Yes.
emotionally, physically, spiritually. And so I mean, having that as part of who you are
Yeah.
and how you show up and how you can now support people coming into your practice. Do you find that you have attracted people who have that depth of either openness, awareness, or have had that level of catastrophic trauma in their bodies because of what you've been through?
I do think I did notice that when we started our practice here in Denver, and as we moved through that journey ourselves. It was 2 months after we opened our practice that we found out I was in kidney failure here in Denver. So it was like, whoa, halt, put on the brakes. And then once I was back in the practice, um, post transplant, which took a couple of years to be fully able to take on the demand because it's a very physical approach to healthcare as well as mentally and emotionally, I did start to notice that we were attracting in quite a bit more um, clients with a traumatic background. They weren't necessarily coming in with the consciousness that that's what they were wanting to address or connect their physical symptoms to. But we take a pretty in depth intake form and we ask things like this. And I was starting to notice, wow, either people are becoming more honest or we're attracting in more people, probably a combination of both, right? Because the more honest I became with myself and being okay with and not judging and having shame around what was going on with my body, I was maybe attracting in more people that also were fine with where they were at in life and also ready to make the connection. Because I think so many, what I notice culturally and when I'm working with clients is there's this acceptance that their diagnosis is forever and their diagnosis is also who they are, and so helping to dismantle that's not our identity. It's a part of what our bodies experience, but we're not our bodies, yet we want to be embodied. And so how do you bridge that gap for people who are identifying with their diagnoses, like I am a diabetic. I am a kidney transplant survivor. That's not who I am. It's what I've lived through and what I live with daily. But who I am is I am, just am.
Oh, I love that so much. I love that we are in our bodies, but we are will you repeat that about the
Yes.
embodied?
Yes. So we aren't our bodies, but we want to be embodied. And so when I
Yes.
put my hands on people, you can feel where they're disconnecting. It is not pleasant to connect with pain. So we try to do things to disconnect from it. For example, like when I put my hands on somebody who has low back pain, they're not breathing there. Their breath gets real shallow in that area. And when the pain hits, like whenever we have pain for any reason, we tend to oh my God, that hurts. Instead of like, how do I breathe through that? And so teaching people just simply breathe under my hand, like expand your breath there. That is like the most obvious way we start to disconnect from ourselves. So helping the people and guide them to teach them how to be with the pain because the medicine is in the pain. There's a message in there that the body's trying to convey. But if we shut down our breath and we disconnect from it and we numb it out with medications, we're missing out on some pretty amazing and profound information about not only what's going on with the body, but what's going on with our life.
Wow, that is incredible. I love that so much. As you were talking, I'm visualizing to myself how your approach is so different because some people who maybe just aren't fully educated on the benefits and beautiful approach of how you look at chiropractic are like, "Oh, can you crack my neck?" Or they're looking for like a quick fix crack, and that literally is the opposite of what you do. So do you
Mhm.
have to deal with that
Oh, yeah.
misconception a lot? Yeah.
For sure, for sure. And I understand where it comes from, right? As a profession, we haven't been the best at educating people on what it is we're doing. And there's also culturally this approach to healthcare that is all about quick fixes, right? So if you want to lose weight, do a program where you have all your meals packaged and pre measured out and you just open it and eat it or open it and put it in the microwave and eat it. There's such a disconnect from what healing and longevity and optimizing life is about. And it's really much slower than we allow it to be. And yeah, I deal with it all of the time. And also it's okay if people are looking for that. We just clarify. So that's one of the reasons we do a free consultation with every client is just like this is where we're heading and we want to make sure that's where you want to go. Because if not, then let's not waste your time and money. If you're ready, if you just want to walk in and lay on a table and get cracked, we're not your place.
Yeah. And I think clarity is always the key, right?
Mhm.
It seems like so obvious, but it really isn't. And so
No.
communicating that clearly. And so just for our listeners who are not local,
Yeah.
Dr. Rachel practices in the Denver, Colorado metro area, as does her husband under Realm Chiropractic. But Rachel also has some other really cool services and incredible ways that she helps people. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about both your yoga
Mhm.
offerings and your coaching?
Yes. Yeah, so all of it is integrated, in the in-person field, it all comes together, with my in-person people. I give yoga asanas as, like, prescriptions for supporting areas that are, needing support. We talk daily, almost every time somebody comes in and lays on the table, we talk about what's going on with their diet, what they could add in to help support healing, what they maybe should avoid right now that's slowing down their healing process. But then for clients that aren't local, um, coaching them on those nutritional concepts and of course all the other stuff, the chiropractic background and the yoga background comes into those conversations as well, just over Zoom or the phone call or whatever, texting, etc. And so one of the things that motivated me to become a coach, a healthcare coach, was that I just love nutrition. It's been a hobby of mine. It's just been a natural interest of mine since I was in my early 20s. I remember taking a class in undergrad where the teacher was a cyclist and she was literally lecturing from the front of the room with her baby strapped onto her, nursing, and talking about this incredible journey she took from one side of the country to the other side of the country, and how nutrition was such a big part of that because she had to figure out how to fuel herself. Her support team had to figure out what to have on hand for her. And it just triggered this passion that has never gone away. Then you fast forward to when I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and trying to figure out what's the best diet? What's the best things I can eat? And at first, from the medical side of things, it doesn't matter what you eat, just you have to take the right dosage based on the amount of carbohydrates you're eating. So it's like, okay, got it. So I have to treat what I'm eating with the medicine. And then once found out I was in stage 4 kidney failure, I actually had a client in the chiropractic office in Durango who was dealing with uterine cancer. And she says, my doctor told me about the keto diet. And when I read about it, it talks a lot about blood sugar regulation and insulin and all these other things that are connected to that and how a keto diet approach could help. And she recommended a book and I read it. I never got coaching myself at that point. I just read the book and started applying the principles, and I'd never felt better. Like all my levels got better. At the time, I was having a hard time running. I was a big time runner, just incredible knee pain, inflammation. My knees would just blow up anytime I would run, and that was like my church. Running was like my church, and so it was really clashing against something I needed to manage my stress and for pleasure and all these things. Having extreme pain when I did it was like, oh my God, what do I do? And one of the things I noticed with the keto diet was I was able to start running again. So I was doing it all wrong, of course. And when we moved to Denver, we had a little bit more um, money. So I was able to hire a coach who I then certified with. And when I was healing from kidney transplant, all I could do was sit around because I was limited on how much weight I could lift, which also meant how much force I could move through my body, which chiropractic. We use force and it's through the core. And I couldn't do any of that until all those sutures had healed. And so I was like, well, I'll just get certified while I'm laying around. So, yeah, I started coaching, and that was over 8 years ago. And I've helped all kinds of people, but I especially love working with diabetics, type 1 and type 2, people who just want to lose weight, and also several people with cancer, because keto diet really helps get that estrogen down. So for estrogenic based cancers like thyroid and breast and uterine and prostate, the keto diet is really supportive, integrated with their medical care approach to really slow the progression of cancer down and help them to heal. So I really love it. I'm meeting with a client for the first time after our meeting today, and I have another one in Chicago that I'm getting ready to meet. I just love it. It's a great way to access people that I can't put my hands on.
What I have found with anyone who I have worked with in a myriad of arenas when your passion is there,
Mhm.
when your, giving service heart is there. And then you can just so deeply identify with these people, even if
Mhm.
their experience isn't exactly mirrored in
Mhm.
what you went through.
Yeah.
You literally were on the edge of death. You had to make all these decisions. You found these tools that have exponentially changed your life. And now looking at you, right? I don't know what people make up in their brain about what somebody who had a kidney transplant or is a type 1 diabetic looks like, but I'm here to tell you, you look like an incredibly fit, muscular, active, Colorado outdoorsy woman, and your experience is such a driving force behind how you give and serve. And so it's just so cool that you bring all that to the table with the people that you partner with. You can identify with them being
Mhm.
scared, not knowing where to turn, not knowing what's right. And I would assume, knowing you, that you present it in a way like, hey, if I'm a fit and I can help you, here's what I do, or you lovingly point them in the right direction. And we are going to share in the show notes all of the ways, if people are listening and so curious, like, how do I go see Dr. Rachel, for chiropractic, or how do I learn about her keto coaching? She has a Facebook group, and we'll make sure we're including that for our listeners. Um, I would love to pivot
Let's do
because I
it.
think one really remarkable thing that I admire about you and how you parent your son.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so, speaking about, like, you are not a diabetic, you are a human,
Mhm.
and you happen to have diabetes.
Mhm.
So, Rachel's son, Noah, is an incredible young man who happens to have been born deaf.
Mhm.
So, just share with us a little bit about finding that out and how you have approached parenting a child who happens to be deaf in a predominantly hearing world.
Yes. Woo, that's a beefy topic for sure. And, I think it's really fueled by just this incredible um, gratitude to get to be a mother at all. So I think it comes whether he was born deaf or hearing. I think a lot of how I parent him would be the same. But certainly once we found out he was deaf, it did feel like, oh my God, I have no idea how to parent. Um, and so when we first got the diagnosis, just very vividly remember like this flood of how in movies sometimes they'll show like the history of something like a Polaroids flashing, like leading him all the way up to now. I just signed. Anyway, so I had that experience where I had no idea I had so many expectations around what parenting was going to be like. It was just culturally in my DNA, like hypnotism, right? Just like watching all my sisters and what they did as parents and watching what happens on TV and watching what happens in our community, that I was going to have like what's his first words and what kinds of nursery rhymes will we sing, and we'll be dancing in the kitchen to our favorite songs. And I had no idea that all that was there until we got the diagnosis. And then all of these flashes of all of that was like, oh my God, it just got wiped clean. And the gift in that is that I could just parent from what is. Every moment is like, this is what's here now. I have zero expectation about what it's going to look like because he's deaf and I have no idea what that is about. I didn't know any ASL at all. Um, Anything culturally. They have their own culture, their own art, their own jokes, their own community gatherings, their own games that they play, their own thing. Everything is very unique to the deaf community. And what an incredible gift to get to learn all of that. But in the beginning, it's kind of very similar to my health story. Well, I had this incredible holistic philosophy about what it is to live and heal and have vitality versus like now you've got to treat this thing with medicine. It was very similar with finding out Noah was deaf and how we were going to parent and all the options. Right? It was in the medical side of thing. It was get him hearing aids, get him speech therapy, and then get him implanted with a cochlear implant. And he was 11 months old when he was diagnosed. He was a baby still. And the thought of putting him under a major surgery was really heart stopping for me. Just even getting over the diagnostics that they would recommend he have before doing a surgery like that, like anesthetizing a baby to go through an MRI. I was like, there's no way I'm going to anesthetize my baby who hasn't even been on this planet for 1 year. There's no way I can do that. What are my choices? What are my options? Um, and then we started like watching everything that we possibly could, like just searching. And so we came across incredible documentaries. There's a really cool one called Through Deaf Eyes. I watched that documentary like 5 times, his in his first month of his diagnosis. And then all of a sudden we started meeting people all over the place that in a town like Durango, a small mountain town, there are no deaf people. And then we'd be at a breakfast restaurant having breakfast as a family, and we'd look across the restaurant and there would be deaf people signing. And it was like, what? And so and deaf people laugh about this all the time. They're like the token deaf person in a restaurant and the random hearing person coming up and being like enthralled or fascinated by what it is that we're doing, or the one parent who just had their baby diagnosed and is like, help me, my child's deaf and I don't know what to do. But I think because we came across more from a humanitarian aspect, like it's so beautiful the way you're communicating, and we have a deaf child and we are looking for support. And that couple that we met at that one restaurant, the story that I'm referencing, ended up going for a walk with us after we all finished breakfast. And our sign was like broken English, right? It was so broken, but we were able to navigate it and figure it out. And I'm still friends to this day with those people. And our son is 16 now, right? So just so
People
beautiful.
come into our lives
Yes,
like, I don't know, we both have a little woo in us, so I
yes,
think we both believe in, like, angels or the universe delivering who we're supposed to meet, and clearly your kidney donor and
yes.
these people were not, by accident.
Not by accident, not at all. Like,
Oh, anyway, back
yeah,
sorry to interrupt, but I just had
no.
to poke that in
No,
there.
it's such a solid thing to acknowledge because I have proof of it through my whole life. Like the manifestation process is legit. And
Yeah,
so that whole idea, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. It's that.
yeah, yeah.
So these people started coming into our life, and then we started meeting people within the community that had a background in working with deaf children and ASL. And so that's what we ended up choosing, obviously, rather than surgery or implanting and trying to force them to speak and listen. Because we had given somebody, I came across it somewhere. I don't know if somebody sent it to me or I saw it on social medias, but it's like, this is what it's like to be a deaf person in the hearing world, and it's a fish riding a bike. I was
Totally,
like,
and you said something like I don't wanna get this statistic wrong, but you said something like, of deaf children, 90% are born to hearing parents, and of that 90%, only 10% learn ASL.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So we have a lot of fish riding bikes in the
Yeah,
world that are been diagnosed deaf. And a lot of times it's a big misunderstanding, right? So we put a lot of faith and trust in our doctors. And so a lot of times what happens in mainstream medicine is they will literally tell parents not to sign with their babies because they won't learn how to speak. And then we tell hearing babies, yeah, go ahead and teach them sign. It helps develop their speech.
remember with my children doing
Yes.
more and all done and small signs
Yes.
before they were verbal, and it was an incredible way to communicate with them. That's
Yes.
so interesting.
Yeah, it's bizarre, but there's a lot of that in the world, right? You could pretty much, find those types of weird concepts in any realm of healthcare or professions. Like it's crazy, and it's just a important thing to ask sometimes when we're up against a challenge in our life, like what's most important to us and why. And then as we clarify those things for ourselves, then the right tools and I think answers come into our sphere so that we can make the choice that feels most aligned rather than trying to make choices out of fear is a really challenging place. And it oftentimes ends up being a choice that we're not in alignment with.
And, advocating for ourselves, educating
Yes.
ourselves, m you know, trusting our own intuition, right?
Yeah.
Like you spoke to, I had a certain camp telling me I had to get this transplant. And then there was also the option to just live as I was and let the universe, decide what was my future and potentially die from this kidney failure. And then
Mhm.
surgery versus embracing him, the way that he is and following that path. And both are just such incredible stories of going within,
Yes.
being our truest, guide, trusting our intuition, taking all of this outside information and then really sitting with what resonates, which is, of what I hope to share and talk about here, right?
Yes.
Is that deeper trust. And then fast forwarding to Noah today, I would imagine that a lot of how you do parent him is the same lessons that we all have with our
Yeah.
children, and they are not specific to him being deaf, although he's an exceptional soccer player and he plays with one deaf team, World Cup Olympic level, and also a hearing team at his high school. So
Mhm.
the resilience that he has to have as an athlete with his teammates, with his coaches, there's that added layer of how he has to communicate and advocate for himself. But then, so we would all have those opportunities to choose to teach our children those lessons through sports.
Yes.
But then there's this added level
Yeah.
of the fact that he happens to be deaf. I mean, you
Mhm.
mentioned to me recently that you were there as an interpreter for him in a conversation where
Mhm.
you had to take off your mom hat,
Mhm.
not interject and allow him as a young man to speak for himself, but you needed to translate to a hearing person,
Mhm.
and that was a real challenge
It is a
to
real
be
challenge,
there
yeah.
as an interpreter, but not as his mom, and so I also respect and commend how you allow him to learn and grow and show up for
Yeah.
himself in all of these realms.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very complex for sure.
Wow. I feel honored to watch it
Oh my
from
gosh.
afar.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, I feel honored to live it. I mean, it's such a blessing. It has its inherent challenges for sure, as parenting has for everybody. And ours is just more obviously unique because you can see that we're communicating differently, right? Such a visual language, which is so amazing because I'm such a visual learner. I had no idea. So for me, I love sign language because I feel like I get to a better understanding quicker than having to go through my hearing filters and misunderstand. I don't know. It's a pretty profound, another synchronicity, right? That I'm a visual learner and here I have to visually communicate with
Yeah.
my child. Yeah.
We make up stories
Yeah.
in our head of what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
Like your example of I envisioned dancing to my favorite
Yeah.
songs in the kitchen with my
Yep.
child, and we don't always get to choose. And so even in that story, even if you had a hearing child, what if they didn't like to dance?
Right. Yeah.
Or one example is when I lived in the mountains and skiing was such a huge part of our lifestyle.
Yes.
My ex-husband and I were so grateful for children who enjoyed skiing, but there were families in our community there
Yeah.
who had kids who hated skiing or
Totally.
hated the snow. And so like there's never guarantees with our
No.
children, with our pets, with things that we don't get to choose. So there's something so beautiful in looking for the lessons and the opportunities and what we are gifted.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, the actual experience that we're having, where's the level of acceptance and where can we find the gifts in it? Because otherwise we start living in a lot of resistance and frustration, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, is such a mindset piece. I mean, you
Mhm.
said whether you believe you can or you can't,
Mhm.
you're right.
Yep.
I was just sharing with one of my children last night on the phone some very actual factual things
Yeah.
about their life, and then was welcomed and invited because I always ask for permission to share feedback. Uh, that a lot of that can be just looked at through 2 different lenses,
Mhm.
right? And so when we shift our perspective, how can we look for the lesson?
Yeah.
Well, gosh, you and I could go on
Forever.
for hours and hours, but I just want to thank you so much for spending time here with me, with our listeners, and If anything we've talked about here today is of interest, we will have more information on Dr. Rachel in our show notes and how you can connect with her in person or socially. And it was so wonderful to have this
Mm,
conversation with you.
so wonderful. Thank you so, so very much. That was a blast.
This has been a Category of One podcast. If this resonated with you, please share, subscribe, or leave a review. I appreciate you.